So we're going to talk about creating custom composer transitions.
Yeah. So so a while back, I was working for a client, and how to put this into context. So first of all, what a scene transition is. A scene transition is a piece of code, a piece of functionality that allows you to control how one scene changes to the next scene. For example, you can see my screen here?
I can.
Okay, so if I push, let me reload this first. If I push scene 2, the button, what it's going to do is going to transition over to scene 2. So as we see here, scene 2 kind of slides in from the bottom. So that's what we're calling, that is what is a scene transition. So Composer comes with, like, I don't know, I want to say about 20, the number could be wrong, about 20 different transitions. From the left, from the right, over the top, under the bottom, swizzly one that twirls around. But, you know, it's great. They did, the guys, the staff, maybe the guys and gals, I don't know. The staff did a great job. They came up with a good list of standard transition and some interesting other transitions. But I think that they realized that we're never going to be able to make all the transitions people want. And so as I was alluding to, I was working for a client, and they said, I really like this transition, but except for this one part where it does this thing, and I'd really rather have come over the top or something like that. I'm like, well, I don't know. That transition doesn't exist. It's not in the list. And then, fortunately for me, there was a blog post, and I can't remember the guy who does it, but he does these blog posts where he'll read the blogs and he'll post 3 interesting topics from the forum.
Yeah, Alex.
Alex, yeah. And so Alex did a post, and I was reading through it, and I said, oh, number 2, or whatever, number 3. Custom transitions. And so I thought, wow, that's pretty cool. So in a nutshell, what Corona lets you do is it lets you either hand code your own transition. So what I'm showing you here is what a transition hand coded will look like. Or if you're lazy like me, or if you just want to change like one little bit, I always say I'm lazy, but you can duplicate an existing transition, which is what I've done here. And I'll discuss the code a little more deeply in a moment. But on this line here, what I've done is I've taken and made a copy of the from bottom effect, and then I make some changes here to modify the way it behaves. And basically I've got a new effect that is from bottom, but with my own little personal twists.
Nice.
So, but the cool thing about this is that you can really go to town the more you understand how these things work. And on that, there is no, as far as I know, there's no documentation on this. This is one of those kind of things where somebody said, hey, I wonder if I could look at the effects list. So what they did is they said, okay, what's Composer library gun? And they did a 4kV iteration over it, which is pairs. So they iterated over the library, and they printed out everything they could find in it. And then they found this. They found this. This is my guess is how it went. They said, effects list. And then they said, well, that's a table. And so then they dumped out the contents of the table, and then they started reading through it, and they said, what's this scene above, concurrent? And they started to experiment by changing. And at the end of the day, they discovered, hey, I can make my own effects.
That is pretty
just
cool.
for people listening, I want to apologize if my voice gets a bit rough. I'm still sick, so I'm trying to drink tea over here and keep it, audible.
Keep things limber.
Mm-hmm.
Is that the blog, the forum post where this conversation came out of?
Yeah. So, I tried to be organized when I did this. Let me go to the top here. Wasn't that organized? Okay, yeah. So, in one of my files here, I actually have a link to the discussion. Let me bring it up just briefly.
And is that where most of this stuff came out of, or how did you come across? If it's not documented, where did you get this?
Well, like I said, Alex did that post, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I read it, and then his posts always have a link back to the original forum blog. And then Ingemar, who is another person in the forums who answers a lot of questions, an enterprise user, did this whole discussion here. And so I read through it, and I'm like, oh, that's pretty cool. And if you read through this here, I'm pretty sure there's a link to another forum post where somebody had been examining Storyboard that also had this ability. So somebody discovered Storyboard can do it, and then said, well, if we can do it with Storyboard, which is the old scene manager, we should be able to do it with Composer. So unfortunately, I don't have both the links. You know what I'll do is I will dig those out and give them to you so we can post them, because there were 2 different blog posts on this, and there were 2 different threads in the forums
Okay.
that talked about this.
Okay. Yeah, those are sound like 2 nuggets that need to be smashed together for sure.
Yeah. So basically what I did was I stole the contents. This particular from forums literally is I took the new effects that they coded up in that forum and verbatim put them in here so we could play with them in our example and see what they do.
I had a science teacher in high school who he said we never stole anything. We liberated it.
Yeah. Well, when I worked at Intel, we had a phrase which was they said steal with pride, and they didn't mean steal. What they meant is learn from what other people have done. Mm-hmm. Grok what they have done, and then make it better.
Yes.
So, and I still do that. I try to do that. I'm always curious about other people's solutions to things and how do they achieve it. So let's go ahead and just try one of these out here. Let me find the code. Excuse me, folks. Yeah, that's right. Okay, so all of these examples, what I'm going to do is, if you look at the example in the Git, you're going to find Hangout 129 under Corona Geek Hangouts, and I'm talking about folder 7, Custom Transitions. Under that folder, and I know it's a little bit hard to read here in the on the screen because I can't make my Explorer text larger real quickly here, but what you want to look at is the scripts file from forums, another one here called Custom Transitions, and then under the IFC folder, which is still under 7 Custom Transitions, I have 2 scenes, scene 1 and 2. And the purpose of these scenes is they're basically the same file, the contents are the same, except one points to scene 1, the other one points to scene 2. So I can just go back and forth and quickly choose different effects and see what they would do.
Gotcha.
Let me run it the way it is now, and then we will make some changes, and I'll show you what some of these things do. Okay,
so all this code will be available. We will link to it in the show notes so you can go get it.
Yeah. So the purpose of this example is to give people a very simple way of testing what the different transitions will look like, without having it all like mashed up in their game. So I like to have like separate test benches.
Yeah.
When I'm experimenting, because then it doesn't get mixed up in the other code that I have to deal with. I don't make mistakes in somebody's project or something. So let me make sure these are all on their standard. So initially what I'm going to use is scene 1 and 2 will use effect called My Effect, and that is created in customtransitions.lua. And I'll just walk you through it. At the top of the file here is an extension to the table library, or table module, however you wish to think of it, called deep copy. And what this does is it will iterate over a table and do its best to duplicate the entire table, even if the table itself has subtables. So you can think of that as like an array of arrays, because it's possible to create a table where some of the entries in the table are actually other tables which have other tables underneath them. And so what this does, as long as you're trying to copy a table that doesn't point back to itself, doesn't iterate back. So for example, you have a table with entry A, and entry A is a table, and entry A has an entry within it that points back to the parent. Mm-hmm. This will not work. It'll go into an endless loop. Okay, so anyways, the point of this is the let me find it here, sorry, is that, as you saw earlier, these effects are found in Composer dot effects list right here, which is a table indexed by the names of the effects. For example, slide left, slide right, or for these custom ones here, iOS slide left. And so what you want to do is either hand code, as I've done in this file, the entire effect on your own, or use deep copy, and then further down here, copy an existing effect. So in this line 56, I'm referencing the from bottom effect. I'm making a deep copy, which will make a complete duplicate of it, and then I'm storing it in a new entry called my effect. So now the transition list will have fade, crossfade, zoom, yada yada yada, and added to this list will be my, if I can spell, my effect, which I can then use later. I just want to point out that if we look at main.lua, the first line here, I load up the composer library, and then the next two lines that execute, all I do is I load up my push button class, which I need, toggle button, and where is it? I am not organized here. What I should have done is loaded up. I should have loaded these in right away. Just to be clear, before you can use them, you need to load them. You only need to do it once. So I should have executed custom transitions and from the forums to make sure that they got loaded. But I think I must have done that in the scene file. Let me take a look. Yeah, so at the top of the scene file, before I start to use these transitions, I require scripts custom transitions, which is this file here, which then I'm currently stepping through to show you how to make my effect.
So are you saying that you would have preferred to do it the other way, or what were you saying?
Well, what I could have done is I could have taken this line of code here, as you can see I'm copying it. I could have done it like this, which would have ensured that as soon as the project loaded, because main.lua is the first file that executes,
Gotcha.
that it would load up the composer library, get it into memory, and then immediately build my custom transitions list. This is the safest way to do it, because then from here on I know that I can always access the effect, the transition, my effect, which I'm creating in this file. But I've loaded it in the scene itself before I started to use it, so that's also safe.
Okay.
So again, the key here is you can't use it until you load it.
Gotcha.
Just remember that. So line 50, undo all my changes here. Custom transitions. Okay, so back on line 56, I'm copying from bottom, and I'm going to name it my effect. Now, 58 through 61, you'll see some code commented out where I'm going to make changes, but I haven't done so yet. So let's go ahead and just run this again, see what it looks like, and let's go make those changes. It's kind of subtle. We click it. As you can see, scene 2 slides in from the bottom, and it slides over the top of scene 1. So well, I could say, well, you know, that's not really what I want. What I'd really rather have is for it to slide underneath the current existing scene. So let's try that. Go to line 60. Let's reference my effect, which I copied just a moment ago. We'll change the scene above parameter and set it to false. I'll reload the project. I'll click scene 2, and what should happen is we'll see nothing. Actually, what we'll see is this scene here is, you can't really kind of tell, but it's 50% translucent background, so we should see the content coming underneath. And as you can see there, we do it a couple times. It's probably a little bit hard to see in the video. People will have to run this on their own, but you can see that it's coming in now underneath.
Interesting.
Undo that. Do it again. Now it's over the top.
And
underneath.
And I'm assuming, I mean, we probably wouldn't do this with normally a 50% translucency on our top layer. So is it we basically preloading something in the background? Is that what we're trying to do?
No. Yeah, I mean, so it kind of defeats the purpose for this transition, because the from bottom is this, what you're getting is this nice effect where you can see it sliding in. That's the whole point of that transition.
Right.
So, but there could be a use. There could be a case where you're like, hey, I want to see it sliding in, and I'm okay making the whole current content of the scene translucent. So let's say maybe what I did is I wanted to see the content sliding in because I had this cool idea for my game or an application. So when I click the button, instead of starting off 50% translucent, at that point I'd put some code in there and say make the background translucent when I click the button, and then you'll be able to see the content slide. It gives this cool effect, you know.
So this could come down to some kind of visual effect that you're trying to achieve with your.
90% of the time, this comes down to, you know, this is when I work with clients. This is always what happens. The client says, "Yeah, I really like that, but could we make it a little faster? Could we do this thing where I can see it sliding in?" You know, it's all about the aesthetics. And so, the takeaway from today's discussion here on custom scene transitions is you, with Composer and Corona, have full access to the list and the attributes, and you can really manipulate the aesthetics of how these things work to get just the effect you want.
Nice. I like that.
So let's go ahead and change concurrent. So concurrent is an attribute. What that says is load the current scene, unload, okay, if it's, I can't remember here. I believe it has to do with unloading the current scene. So I've done it, I've reloaded it, and I think with concurrent false, what this is saying is it's going to unload scene 1 after it gets done with the transition. No, you know, it would be good if you remembered these things before you talk about them. Okay, it's how it loads it. So you can see that there's a difference now in when it draws the content. Okay, yes. Okay, I'm sorry. So back me up. Rewind, pretend I didn't make that mistake. Concurrent is saying, if this is true, do the create as you do the transition. If it's false, it's saying do the create before the transition, I believe. So it's a question of the timing of how the scene is created. Now, other people may chime in and say I'm wrong here.
Okay.
The point is you can experiment with these things and see what they do.
Yeah.
The effects that you want.
And you have two attributes of an effect that you're able to manipulate at the same time.
So let me show you the other ones from the forums, just because I thought they were kind of cool. We've got what they called iOS slide left, I guess modeled after some kind of transition they'd seen in iOS. And just a variety of other ones here. So let's go ahead and just run our example. Now I've reset everything, so what we're going to initially see is the from bottom effect, which looks like this, slides over the top of the current scene. But then I could say use slide left instead. This is in scene 1. And load it.
Okay.
I don't know why that's... Oh, iOS slide left, not from. So it's kind of this kind of weird looking to me. It kind of looks weird to me, and it could have something to do with my choice of texture for the background. What it seems to be doing is sliding in at the same time as it sort of slowly slides out the other content.
Yeah.
It gives it this kind of interesting effect. And then we could do go to scene 2 and choose slide right.
Now these effects are things that you've created or things that...
Oh, these are pulled right from the forums entry,
okay.
Which I'll give you the link. These were created by Ingemar, I believe.
Okay.
So we go to scene 2, and then we come back, and it does the other way. So those are kind of interesting. Let's change these.
Yeah, almost gives you an effect that they're interacting with each other in some way, like one slide is rubbing on the other slide or something.
Yeah, you know, for my clients, what they're really looking for is this sense of continuity between the two scenes. Like they're somehow connected to each other, like a page of paper, in a sense, right? Like a physical object. I think the thing with the transitions is they take what we know as a virtual thing, that we could display it in any way. We could pop the content in, whatever, fade it in. But it gives it this sense of tactile or tangibility. It makes it feel more real.
Yeah, organic.
Yeah, I don't know how
Free range.
individual people will describe it differently. So
it's free range code.
Free range code. So let's see. Let's do this panel down. So that's about as exciting as it gets. Just to reiterate.
So the point here is that someone would want to go and download the code that you've provided and have a ball with changing the different attributes and figure out what.
Play around.
Yeah.
Another thing I suggest they do is go in here and look at individual effects, and what you can do is you can add a bit of code here at the bottom. And probably what I'll do is I'll just leave it in. I'll leave this in, KV in pairs, and then you say let's choose an effect from the list. Let's choose crossfade. Put this in here. Do say print KV. And I'm going to run this. Sorry, folks. And I'll bring over the console. And what you'll see here is it iterated. Oh, you know what? I made code for this already. What a ding dong. Dump transition effect. I have got a function in here already for people if they want to dump out the contents of the transition, and so they can see what they had before versus what they have now. What I'm doing is I'm iterating over the contents and printing out what's in here.
Okay, that makes sense.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah. Okay.
I can't tell you how many times I've done that where you put stuff together ahead of time, and then when you get there, you forgot that you put the stuff ahead of time. So it's a canceling effect.
It seems like a good idea now, and it did then too. I just forgot that I'd done it.
Okay, well, awesome. I think this is a great conversation, and I may try to talk with the people who do the. I think Brent, specifically, to see if we can maybe add some documentation around this. This is seems like a good thing.
Just like a little listing of what the instead of me guessing what concurrent means, does somebody really tell me in a nutshell what concurrent is saying?
Yeah, because Brent can go back to the engineers and say, okay, are these all the attributes that we can access, or is there something missing from the list? And that would be good. I think that, especially
exactly. That's it. One of the things that's hard about this is you kind of got to go out there and look at every transition and go, oh, what's that field? Concurrent. Because not all of them use all of the attributes.
Oh yeah, and what does that mean? What does concurrent mean? So
right.
In this context. So, and I think that would be a good thing to do because it's a value add, right? I mean, you've got, like you said, hey, here's a bunch of standard transitions that are out of the box that you can use, but you also have the ability to create your own.
I also suspect that my example here is only scratching the surface on the things that you can do. Sort of as a teaser, there's also the transitions library, and I saw a really cool example the other day where somebody made not a custom transition for the transitions library so much. They did that. But what they did was they realized is they could substitute their own function as a transition. So it wasn't like preset values. It was a function which could then dynamically choose how it behaved at runtime. So I mean, what was really powerful about this was the transition was running, and every time the transition said, I need to update my values, it would call this function instead of just using a fixed set of rules like do a logarithmic or divide it by 2 or ease it over 20% or whatever. It called the function, and the function itself, if you think about it, could be dynamically changing as time goes. So you can get some really funky, interesting transitions. And my guess is that might also apply here. I just haven't cracked the nut on how to do that quite yet.